To see you. We're going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to introduce myself real quick. My name is Jeremy Ashworth. I'm the pastor of Circle of Peace Church in Peoria, Arizona. We're in suburban Phoenix. To my left is Jamie Howard. She is the ministry director at Circle of Peace, and that just means she does everything pretty much. To her left is Dr. Deb Merrifield Carruthers, who is the absolute best church board chair I have ever worked with in my entire life. And we're super glad that you are here tonight. We may have some other folks joining us. This is being recorded. You're in a session where you are going to hear about outdoor church and the other crazy stuff that we tried during COVID. If you're in the wrong session, this will be better than what you signed up for anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and jump in. Just kidding. My agenda tonight is really just to tell our story. It is far less prescriptive for you than it is descriptive for us. We got pretty far outside our comfort zone in COVID. I think a lot of folks did. And we just want to tell the story of what we did. Not because we were always successful. We weren't. Not because the things that we did would work for you. I'm not saying they would or wouldn't work. I don't know what would work for your church or your congregation. But our goal is, number one, to tell our story and hopefully inspire you in your congregation in your own way to go for it. Whatever that means for you, to go for it. Wherever the Spirit leads you, whatever wisdom God gives you, to just go for it. God used this time for us and our church as an opportunity to expand our horizons big time. And it has influenced our church in really profound ways, even a couple of minutes before this call, to be completely honest with you. So, again, I'm praying just for you. By telling the story, the Spirit would move you and your church to do some things that expand your horizons. Quick word about format. All I want to do, I have 3 sections, and all I want to do is talk about 3 things: before, during, and after outdoor church. That's all we're going to do: before, during, and after. At the end of each section, I'll pause and I'll make sure that Jamie and Deb get to talk. And then I'll ask questions. So there'll be 3 opportunities for questions. I hope you have them, people, okay? Because I want you to be able to ask honestly anything you want to ask, and we will answer honestly. So before, any questions about that, about format? I like that. I'm seeing thumbs up from Jim Lefevre. Good to see you, Jim Lefevre. Okay. Before, and this one's going to be shorter. In early 2020, Circle of Peace had just gone to 2 Sunday morning worship services. We were running out of space, and we were just beginning to do the early work, the earliest possible work on building a new facility because we were running out of space. Then COVID hit. And at first, our board said, we're not going to shut down until we have to. And then guess what we did? We went to 100% video church. We did video church for about 7 months. Sure didn't expect to do that. And it hit us hard because we're a smaller church. We're high touch, far more than high tech. Big learning curve for us. And we were a relational church. So it hurt, and it was hard to not be able to be with people. We were, however, blessed from the beginning. Somebody in our church who's a physician assistant, a number of healthcare personnel who worked with COVID patients, but a physician assistant. She was really our key medical liaison in all this. And if you know anything about Phoenix, the summer is awful. Phoenix has 2 seasons, heaven and hell. And the summers are terrible, but the rest of the year is really, really nice. And as we were coming into the summer of 2020, Sarah, our medical liaison, said, hey, Jeremy, I want you to consider something. She said, pre-vaccine. She said, there are 3 main ways to mitigate against COVID. Pre-vaccine, you can be outside, you can be masked, you can be distanced. And she said, it's my medical opinion that you don't need all 3. You can do 2 out of 3. So she said, if you have church outside and get a little distance, people can come, take off the mask, they can sing, be around each other. Now, if you're all up in your business and you're up close, or you want to give somebody the holy kiss or something like that, probably ought to mask up. But if you've got a little bit of distance and you're outside, let's have church. And we were like, hot dog, we're good to go. So that 2 out of 3 was really our sort of medical North Star that helped us organize everything we did from that point. Our hope, our prayer really was not only to regather as a church, but to use this as an outreach opportunity. We really, really hoped that people would give our church a shot, or people who weren't Christians would maybe give the faith a shot if they felt they could gather safely. And that was really our goal. At that point, it was a mountain of logistics, right? It's Jamie and I ordered 5 different kinds of shade structures because we have ample space outdoors, but we have no good venue for seating and we have no shade. And even though it's a nice 85 or 90 here in Phoenix, you can't do that in the sun. I mean, you need to be in the shade. So we bought a bunch of different shade structures. Which one works the best? Do we have enough chairs? Oh my goodness, we don't have enough folding chairs. How can we get set up outside for sound? We started a live stream station to be able to live stream our services. That ended up being a huge, huge difference for us, and it paid off later on. We went big into promotions. We spent money on video promotions, something that was really crazy. We had people juggling toilet paper and breathing fire. Not kidding. Look it up. It's an awesome video. We did giant signs out in front of the church and giant signs out on the corner that just said church outdoors. Was it 9 a.m.?
Yep.
Church outdoors, 9 a.m. That's it. Church outdoors, 9 a.m. And just put it out there. Right as we started to be able to do this, we were going to launch in November of 2020. We were informed that we could get shut down by the city. And that makes me sad because I'm from the Midwest. And I'm like, do we have to ask the city to gather for religious services on our own property? And they're like, yeah, to cover your Patuski, you probably should. And so we're like, all right, how do we do this? And so we had the same folks who we were working with to build a new building help us get some sort of permission from the city. And that began my career as a Pharisee, working with the city and to do whatever sort of legal pretzel twisting I needed to do to make regulatory bodies happy. Spend your whole life being a New Testament Christian. It's very hard to revert back to being a Pharisee, but I'm working on it. So we started in November 2020, and I'll stop there because that's the during and not the before. So I'll pause at this moment and say, Jamie, Deb, what would you add? And please do add to any of this.
I think just speaking about the logistics, because that was the world that I was in the most, not the city logistics. I didn't have to become a Pharisee. I just had to be maybe a Matthew, a details person. But I think the legwork and the time that we spent, even just as simple things like ordering all the things that we needed to ordering multiples of them and returning the ones that didn't work, organizing the people and the teams to do setup and tear down in that way every Sunday.
It's a big task. The setup and tear down was huge.
Yep.
Huge.
And the other piece was the music piece and just getting all of the teams to do all the things that they needed to do and all the logistics. I mean, it was a lot of legwork, but it paid off. That was huge.
And you did children's ministry outdoors too, right?
We did. Yep. So we sat down with the children's ministry team and kind of thought through all of the different pieces of that. How are we going to do this? What is it going to look like? Where are we going to do it? And yeah, I mean, just all of that legwork. We didn't have to make very many changes because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy did a sweet thing. She bought hula hoops for all the kids, and that was their personal space because they're not good at personal space. So every kid had a hula hoop that defined where they could be in relation to other kids. That was a silly logistic, but it worked really well.
It did work really well.
Yeah. So it was a lot of work, and we had people requesting outdoor church again. So
yeah, for sure. Hey, does anybody have any questions about the before times, the getting geared up for outdoor church, or when we did video church? Anyway, I hope somebody has questions for some of these sections, but any questions or curiosities, and get nosy, people. I'll answer questions about anything you want to know. Don't be afraid.
What kind of technical equipment did you have to buy or order to do it outside?
So Carlene, I'm going to say we spent what, $7,000, yes. I think probably on everything. I think we spent quite a bit of money on the shade structures because we had the real estate but doggone did we not have seats or any kind of shade in any way, shape, or form. Well, you start to do that, and what did we buy? Like 12 of those monsters? Like 12 by 12.
Yes, big and in their own rolly bags, so they were easy-ish for volunteers to put up. They were massive, and they held up really well.
Yeah, they did hold up really well. I think we spent money. I think we didn't spend a ton of money on sound equipment. I don't think
we pulled apart what we had inside.
Yep.
We had a good sound system inside, and so our sound guys at the time and our sound tech pulled from outside from what we had inside, and just we bought a cart to put it on and ways to make it easy to transport back and forth. A lot of the stuff that we spent money on was more like the logistical ways to maneuver all of that, and then they spent time paring down kind of what we already had and what would work outside. Okay,
I'll tell you one other dumb thing we had to spend money on, something you've never even heard of before, called an acoustician. Because we got a complaint from the neighborhood about noise, and we had to hire somebody to come in and listen to our acoustics and help us turn our mics in a way that wasn't going to be a noise to the neighborhood.
Yeah. So that's
during.
That's during, but that's okay.
Spoiled it.
Sorry, Jeremy.
It's okay. It's okay. We forgive you, Deb. So go ahead.
I want to say too, but part of the before was also at the same time working to make sure that our community felt connected to each other, wasn't totally disconnected.
Yeah.
And that's where we did a few things like we came up with something called touch points, which was dropping stuff off to people or finding ways to like have something that connected everybody that we drove to their house.
Care packages, you made something. The people who are chefs and like to cook make their own special spice packet, and we deliver it to like 200 people in the church or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But so it wasn't just gearing up for this thing that we were doing, but also at the same time trying to make everybody still feel connected to each other. Another way that we did that through our video church was just having people record things from home and including that in our services every week, having like a verse that was important to them or a little something so that you could kind of like people were chiming in from home, and that was good too. Yeah,
pre-recorded video services. We weren't doing live during the pandemic. Yeah,
you did some.
We did a few that were live, but mostly it was pre-recorded. You know, and I sat on my couch and cried every Sunday because I wasn't able to be with people, but it was also so great to sort of see people. So, okay, so I see Jenny and Steve has her hand up, and I also got a text question, but we'll start with Jenny and Steve. Go for it.
Mine was that Steve and I watched you, because our pastor, Eric Brummett, knew who you were. And so we tried to learn from you, and we kind of laughed because you would run in to some place like inside the church. The music guys were all set up and they'd play. Then you'd run back out and you do your little thing. And then they'd take a shot of your audience, which was kind of interesting because we were told we weren't supposed to do that. But
Jenny. Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously, we'll get to that. And remind me if I don't talk about the running. I'm not kidding. That's just really a thing.
Okay.
Like that's very legit. What you're recognizing is very, very legitimate. Okay, I got a question. Let's see if I can figure this out. What rules were you potentially breaking by having service outside? Did you need specific permits, and for what? Okay, so it is my understanding that we were actually operating technically in what my understanding is a gray area of the law. That we were ideally from the city of Peoria supposed to have, what was it, an event permit or something like that for anything that generated noise outdoors. However, an ongoing Sunday morning sort of fits that definition and sort of doesn't. It's also the COVID era, and so cities were sort of enforcing those and sort of not. And gray areas of the law are what keep lawyers in business. And so when our project manager said, look, we need to be communicative with the city and kind of request an informal permission, what he recommended was that he, as an official project manager that operates within the city of Peoria, be our kind of spokesperson and advocate for our church and say, this is what the church plans to do. This is their seating arrangement where they plan to be seated. Notice they are socially distanced and outdoors and not breaking any COVID anything by any doctor or anything. And we are, as a courtesy, informing you that as a religious group, we are gathering outside and might make a little noise. because it was a weird thing where were we supposed to ask permission or were we not? We sort of fit the, I mean, we weren't doing an outdoor, one-time outdoor concert. So we sort of fit the definition of the thing and sort of not. And so he said, let's inform the city of what we're doing. Let's demonstrate our diligence and say, does this look diligent to you? Do we kind of have the city's blessing? And so that's sort of how we operated. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Okay, any other questions about the before times? All right, here we go. So on our practice Sunday, we got a noise complaint. Practice Sunday, right out of the gate, baby. And that was disconcerting immediately because if you remember, Jerry, the guy who's helping us build new stuff, was like, red flag, red flag, red flag. I'm like, Jerry, why is it a red, like, noise complaints? He said, if you get noise complaints for outdoor church, it could derail your building project later. Yeah, oh, Shazam. So what we did is we immediately had all our documentation from the city. Remember that email that we got from the city? And we would give it to Deb or Sean or her husband, or we would give it to somebody in the church. We would have in a binder ready to go in case we got the cops called on us. We had sound personnel. If you don't know that Circle of Pieces property, our property is shaped sort of like the screen, like a big rectangle. And most of our property is not developed. So our church is here, and there's parking here, and there's big open space here. Yeah, the church is sort of shaped like this. Yeah, visual aids people, okay? High tech right here. And we were sort of doing church sort of in this place here. And so what we would do is we'd have our sound guy, our AV tech, go to the four corners of the property, here, 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 and here, and do a decibel meter reading and record it every single Sunday and put it on an open Google document. So anybody, including the city of Peoria, could look at that thing at any time, and we could prove that we were under the decibel reading for outdoor events. I'm a Pharisee now. So,
but that was after having the professional come.
Yes. So in addition, what we did do, we didn't spend money on the acoustician, actually. Yeah. Got a free favor out of that too. Yeah. But we said, hey, acoustician, what do? We got complaints in the first 27 seconds of our practice service. And so again, the property is shaped like this, and the church building is here, and sort of like the band was here and the seating was here. He's like, you've got your speakers pointed this way toward the neighborhood. He's like, point the speakers sort of back toward you and away from the neighborhood. And after that, we never had another complaint. No problem whatsoever. That also will go on to affect what we do when we build, but that puts you on pins and needles when you're A, trying to not get anybody sick with COVID, and B, trying to not get a building project derailed or tick off the neighbors. You want to invite your neighbors to Jesus, not invite them to court. So that's what we're trying to do, kind of. But it was stressful, man.
But an easy fix.
Yes.
It did end up being an easy fix.
Like,
hallelujah.
I mean, the part of the thing is we're trying to like inspire you guys to do the thing. And so don't get derailed by one complaint, because
keep going.
It could be an easy fix. Like it really was. And it was just a matter of turning.
And we're pretty sure they came to church to visit us.
They did visit. We didn't get them saved, but we tried.
But
man, did we try.
They liked us, we're pretty sure.
Okay, so we set up a live stream station, ended up being a game changer, wasn't fancy. That's what Jenny would have looked at. Let's talk about running, okay? So typically we have a pretty small worship center. I can walk around indoors and greet everybody and shake hands and that sort of thing. Outdoors, man, like the transition space to get from where I'm sitting over here to where I'm up front. To make that timely, I'm running through the property. If I want to greet people, like we were not in clustered close. We had a little bit of distance. Okay. So band is here. I'm here. The seating is here. I've got to run back to catch those people. Guess what else? The people didn't sit in the seating section. We had a nice stuff all set up right here, but they're like, I can sit in my car right here. I'm going to drive my car on the dirt over here. I'm going to bring my own camping shelter and go here. So it's like people had like 60 feet of physical distance. There'd be people like literally dozens of feet away from other people in a little shade structure going, I like this. This is fun. But I'm a greet everybody kind of pastor. I'm sprinting. I'm sweating like a hog trying to go out and be with people and hi, I'm not going to touch you, but I'm going to greet you from 10 feet away, but I got to run across the property to do it. Jenny, running was a feature of outdoor church. It's just what I needed to do to cover the space.
It was his COVID fitness plan.
That's right. Yeah, totally worked too. Vitamin D, big deal. So one of the amazing things we found was that, good golly, we started to get a really good stream of new folks, a really good stream of visitors. One lady stopped by, her name is Francie, and she said, I found you when you were 100% online. I just moved to the area. You're my church now. Then she said, I see you've done some relief work with the Navajo Nation. Let's do it again. And I said, and she's like, yes, let's do it. And I said, okay, yes. And so this one lady who found us during Outdoor Church moved in next door to our building, watched our services online, came the first Sunday in person, has been lighting that ministry on fire ever since. And guess what? Not only were we able to provide gifts and supplies and support to folks suffering on the res, the Navajo Nation, because we were online, we got offerings to this, we got gifts to this offering from all over the country. People in other states who saw us online were signing over their stimulus checks to our assistance fund to send out to the Navajo Nation. And that kind of dynamism doesn't happen if it's only the people in the room. Yeah, I'm clapping too, Linda Williams. I'm still clapping. It's amazing. Yeah. Totally lit the thing up. So we thought people would sit with 10 or 20 feet of physical distance, and it's weird. And they got masks and they got sunglasses, and it's like, it's okay, you're here, thank God, but it's weird when you look out on a bunch of people who are dozens of feet away with you with this and this covered up. Weird for this pastor, at least. You know, in church, everybody wants to sit in the back row. These, like, the back row was supposed to, like, stage here, back row is supposed to be here. They were sitting out by the street. It's like if you'd be any further in the back row, you'd be off the property. So just so you know, in case of a global pandemic, people still going to want to sit in the back pew, even if the back pew is almost off the property. Literally true. One of the sort of cool things that would happen is I'd be sort of standing right here before the service. And because of the way our church is built, there's a main thoroughfare right here. So, oh my gosh, beautiful. You'd see people drive in. You see them walk in. Oh my gosh, people walking into church. People biking in to Outdoor Church. Mom's got the baby in a stroller, turns the stroller in, and you see people streaming in from all directions. And you're like, I'm going to cry. This is amazing. I don't know who they are. It was a powerful, powerful sort of experience. By not having, like, in the front door of a church, you have to walk through the front door to get there. In this way, people just sort of streamed in from all these different directions, which was like spiritually beautiful and aesthetically beautiful. And Jenny, it was logistically difficult because there's no front door. That means there's no greeter at the front door. We had greeter stations. We had people ready to sign up. We had people ready to give gifts, and they just walked by the table because the table's here and they're streaming in from all these places. So I'm running out. Hi, I'm a sweaty pastor, you know, like, but that's what it took to literally cover the physical territory. But it ended up being a beautiful thing. Some of the more colorful things that happened during a message, I had a hummingbird come and land and perch on my music stand. Little St. Francis moment, right? Linda Williams. It's exactly how I felt. The happy scream is what that was. My 4-year-old tried to go to the bathroom in the bushes.
Yep.
We're outdoors. Not that he never did that before this.
But he's housebroken. He is
housebroken. Yeah, he knows what to do, but he's like, we're outside. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, no, son. Like, we had rabbits run through the band sort of area. I got a lot of sunburn on my scalp, like burn on my scalp. And so the team's like, you know what, Pastor, let's set you up an umbrella. So you'd see they run out with an umbrella, set up the umbrella, and then get shade. And then one day we got wind so bad that the umbrella is like moving away, and I've got to hold on to the umbrella while I'm preaching the word of God. And it's like, whatever, let's preach in a pandemic while this is blowing. And I say all of that because it's playful and fun, but there's also something about building the resilience and building the, like, I'm going to push through this. Like, my people are showing up for me. I am the heck going to show up for them. I'm going to preach through the wind. I don't care. The Holy Spirit's wind. And it's that kind of attitude that we try to just sort of bring to everything. Like, wind's going to stop us? Nope, it's not stopping them. They're showing up out here getting sunburned. We're going to give, right? They're giving of their presence. We're going to give ours the best we can. And so we try to carry that kind of attitude to anything. Set up and tear down about burned out a lot of our people. That's no joke. It was a lot of work. And 60 new families came to our church for the first time because of Church Outdoors. Knockout. 60 new families.
Yeah.
Big
In
deal.
months.
Yeah, in 7 months.
Not people, families.
Not people, yeah, households.
Yeah, households.
Yeah, 60 new households. We spent a bunch of money on video. I do it again in a heartbeat. You should look it up. It's fire, it's toilet paper, it's a lot of fun. But nothing did more than the signs out front that said Church Outdoors. And it was freaky because I know it was a good moment, okay? But it was also like, man, all these people are just driving by waiting on us to do something interesting. And waiting on us to say it simply and invite them to it. Like, these are the same people that drove by before. And yeah, it looked like a farmer's market or a concert, and that definitely had some interest. But it was like, wow, people are driving by waiting for us to do something cool and waiting to be told about it. And I've been to some of your churches, and I'll tell you, love ya, same thing or more with many of you just by way of your location. So put a cool sign out that says something and invite them to something. We do have good visibility. There's no question about that. Not everybody's in that state. And we were in a particular cultural moment. There was a big cultural shift, a COVID shift, and we decided we're going to steward the shift. We know we're not going to be outdoors forever. Not everybody's going to be in this moment forever, but we're going to jump in at this transition point, and doggone, we're going to do something. And it ended up being a really good experience. So right now, take a breath and ask Jamie and Deb what you would add to the during time period.
I think for me, the things that come to mind the most are just because I was, again, in charge of the teams. And I think, you know, we had to, the phrase monitor and adjust comes to mind. My husband's a teacher, and that's like a teachery phrase that he taught me. But, you know, you can make the best plans, and I say plan, but when you're in it, you kind of have to assess that plan all the time and make adjustments as necessary. Jeremy was talking about how people were coming from all over the place. So we had made a plan to have 2 different greeting spots and break our teams up differently, but then came like ongoing training about, okay, you know, the greeter, Deb was one of the greeters, I'm pointing to her, but like, you know, hey, we don't know who these people are because their entire face is covered. And so then the training changed, you know, shifted to, well, this is how we're going to greet them then, you know, say this or do things like this. And instead of waiting for them to come to you, walk across the, you know, we have this big empty dirt lot where our building will be, and meet them halfway through the lot, you know, finding creative in different ways. So stepping outside of the box, you know, and meeting the needs that you see coming with training and supplying the teams with the answers to the questions that are coming up in real time, you know.
And I would say it was like stepping outside of the box, and then stepping outside of the box, and then stepping outside of the box, and then stepping outside of the box. And like I've spent 20 plus years in pastoral ministry, and a lot of churches are in some degree of stuckness. And there's often talk about comfort zone and everything. This was like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 degrees outside our comfort zone that we just kept having to push. But in order to pursue the mission and the opportunity, that's where it was. And that's where we had to go over and over and over again.
Yeah, well, and on all fronts, I think of things like security. You know, we're trying to have safety and security for our team. I mean, it's a weird time. You don't know who's going to drive across the property or, you know, out front. It's a big, busy road. And for our kids, they were meeting outside, but on the back side of the building and making sure, you know what I mean? All of it was just sort of this ongoing cycle of continued conversation, and how are we going to take care of this thing, and this came up, and now how are we going to do that, and trying to get ahead of it our best. So that was good. And then the other thing that came to mind was just the idea, we knew that Jeremy talked about COVID shift, you know, we knew that we were capitalizing or providing something that some of the people coming would be coming because they were unhappy or didn't like the way their home church, like that was their reason for checking us out, is because we were doing the thing that fit with their mitigation level or with their comfort level or whatever, you know, and acknowledging that for what it was, but still trying to be authentic in who we are, and not shift who we were as a community and our core and our values to meet the times, but allow the things that are our core values to shine through the times, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it attracted people for that reason, I think.
Yeah. Remind me to come back to that later, but I want.
Well, okay, we laughed theologically along the way because we said we were running out of space. And so God reminded us that we lived on 5¼ acres right outside our door. And so the cool thing was we got to shrink from 2 services to 1 because we had 5 acres to fill and people filled it.
Yeah.
So it was sweet.
Deb, you said something once early on that was super, super smart about, it was about something about being able to drive by and see the church, like not the building. Yeah. But to see a worship service happening live. You said something about that kind of lowering a barrier for entry or lowering anxiety levels. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, we had people who reported to us that we would have been afraid to walk through a door because that would have been a commitment. This lowered the commitment level. They could come, and we had people literally say that. We had a couple who joined the church on Sunday who said, we came during COVID church outdoors, saying to ourselves, we're going to take our own lawn chairs. And if it's weird, we're going to pack up our lawn chairs and go home. And no one's even going to know our name. So it really did offer, it was crazy. We were doing it practically, but it ended up being this spiritual gift we never could have predicted.
Big time.
Yeah.
I think the kind of full story, the kind of honest version about the 60 new households, which thrilled us. I mean, it was just like amazing to do. Right. Like, if any of you know, I'm writing a series of articles for Messenger magazine called 500 Coffees, because I've 8 years here in Phoenix, I've taken, it's actually quite a bit more than 500 people out for coffee and had visits with them. So I'm the coffee guy, right? I'm the take people out for coffee guy. 7 years in my church, new human walks in the door, I take him out for coffee, okay? Asking these 60 new families to go to coffee, I got like 4 or 5 willing to go out with me for coffee. I'm like, we'll meet outside 10 feet apart, like whatever. And they're like, nope, nope, nope. And it was killing me because like we're a small church, our sweet spot is a personal touch and people don't want to be touched. Like people don't want a personal, like they kind of do want a personal touch and kind of don't. Like it used to be, if you want to go hide on the back row, you go to a mega church. That's where you're anonymous.
Right.
But now you can be anonymous in our thing. But we don't want to be anonymous. Like we want to get to know you. And they're like, you'll not see the whites of my eyes or my face. Like you'll never identify me in a lineup. And so while it definitely lowered the barrier for entry, and I celebrate that and I'm glad for it, it also made it easy for people to ghost on us. It made it easy for people to almost treat a small church like a mega church environment, in that they could be anonymous, they could slip in and out, they could come and go as they pleased. And it killed me. Like people would, I mean, 7 years, I got 7 years of track record of people going, yeah, this is cool. Like I'll meet with you for coffee. And in a couple of cases, people would give us money before they would give us their name or address. That's weird, man. That was not pre-COVID at all. And so the other thing I think, just by way of pure honesty, is that even though the response was good and I was grateful for it, we underrated, this is adult talk here. I speak for myself and say, I overrated the safety market, meaning I thought people would want to be safe. And we definitely did connect with people who wanted to be safe. And thank God we've grown with medical personnel. We've grown with the doctor family, a couple of nurse families, actually a scientist family, a science teacher family, science professor family. And our churches, we're all quantifiably and quantitatively, quality and quantity, both, like we're better for it. But I'll tell you what I did not expect. And I'm going to say this is a little hyperbole, okay? So brace yourself. I feel like more people would have come to church if I would have put a sign in the front yard that said, COVID is a hoax, everything is normal, come on in. Because I personally overrated the safety market and underrated the denial market. Now, if I'd have done that sign, I don't think it would have been morally right. And I don't think you should do that. But my point is that I expected there to be more people to be concerned about safety than there were. And that was a big reality check for me. I expected people to want a personal touch. Many of them didn't. And I expected, but again, I'm not crying and I'm not unhappy. God bless and using the whole thing, but I sure got educated. Okay, I got a chat from Eric Brummett. Hallelujah, I see that hand. Okay, have you lost any people during this time? Oh, no, Eric. Everyone has stayed. We love Jesus. Meaning people chose to leave and not come back. If so, did they give you a heads up quietly or did they ghost out? So we definitely lost people. So this is, Jamie and I were talking about this earlier. Big picture, and this is weirdo, is where we're at. In this moment, we are probably at Circle of Peace 4.0. Okay, so pre-COVID, we were Circle of Peace. COVID, our church changed. And that means the people who were involved with the church, a number of the things that we did. Okay, so we went from pre-COVID to video church. We're at Circle of Peace like 1.0 or 2.0. Okay, we go from video church to outdoor church, changed again. Circle of Peace 3.0. And then in the change from outdoor church to indoor church, because that sure didn't go as planned, but it was good, changed again. So Eric, I'm here to tell you that we've gone through probably 3 or 4 transformations through each major phase that we've done as a church. Of course, we've lost people at each stage. And it's been a combination of people giving us a heads up and people ghosting. I would say probably majority ghosting, and that's what hurts the most. Because when somebody says, I'm in, I want our children to grow up together, and then they don't return my phone calls. I've done weddings, I've done funerals, I've put people in the ground, right? And then nothing. I've never had so many people not return my calls or texts. So the core of the church holds steady. I don't want to suggest otherwise. I'm not sure we would be here if that wasn't the case. But there was enough transition and enough change and enough turnover and enough pain, frankly, in that, at the simultaneous blessing of new folks who were like, I'm in. Other thing I should say about new folks, I would love to have had more heathens, meaning I would love for people to have said, you know what, I'm not a Christian, but I'm interested. Do you like that, Jenny? Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate that. John Chubb, I'm not so sure. He didn't laugh like you laughed, Jenny. There you go. Got a smile from John. John Chubb has the best tattoos in the denomination. I'm going to say that right now, in the whole denomination. No, we had thought that there would be people who might want to maybe give the faith a chance if they felt they could be safe. Overwhelmingly, that was not the case. Typically, it was somebody who was mad at their church.
Or maybe not mad, but just unsatisfied with the way they were handling it.
Yeah. And
Or
they,
mad.
right.
Or mad.
Or
but
mad.
Not everybody that came to us was
Right.
mad.
No, I don't want to say that it was all mad, but it was often folks, there was a reshuffling of the deck. And in my experience, that reshuffling is still happening.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not saying that's all good. It's not all good. It's also not all bad. We can talk about that later and hug each other and cry over Zoom. But that transition between churches is still happening. And we're choosing to engage that. We're choosing to engage that in some way. I'm surprised by how many people were frustrated with their church and checked us out for that. Oh, but we did engage with people who had no church home whatsoever and who are looking for a safe place, to be. Questions? What you got? Laura from Pop Go Views. Did you have problems with traffic noise every day? How could people hear you when they sat so far back? I have no idea.
You could. I sat in the back partly because of my family and trying to keep my kids distance, but also because there were so many people in the back. I was sort of the gatekeeper. I made myself the gatekeeper to try to catch the people that Jeremy couldn't reach because he was 100 feet away.
100 yards.
100 yards, yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, the traffic noise was loud, but most of the time it really, I mean, you could hear pretty well. I mean, because of where we placed the speakers, and our building is sort of shaped like this. And so we pointed the speakers at the building. So there was a lot of like.
Enclose the sound a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the people who sat back there were okay with not hearing as well so that they could feel safe. I mean, that was really sort of the general deal at that time.
And I would say that we're talking not just COVID safety, but we're talking personal social sense of safety as well.
Yeah.
Like if somebody does not, like you do not, nobody medically needs 3 masks and 60 feet of physical distance outdoors. Like that's just not medically necessary.
But we had folks who did it.
We absolutely had folks who did 3 out of 3 consistently. But they were there. Hallelujah. I'll take it. The other thing I would say, and this is the kind of, so I really am at heart, I can be a very meditative person and I appreciate silence. And I can find it almost nowhere on this property. And that's because we live by a busy road. And so we just have to choose. Do we want the dynamism of living in a growing area Do we want the upside? Because you can't have the upside and the downside. You either want the upside of lots of people and lots of activity and lots of traffic, or you want a retreat center. Can't have it both ways. And so while I would personally like something quiet, that's when I go to my house. And that's about as close as I'm going to get to a retreat center. Whereas we are always going to have noise on this property because of the cars that go by. Good question. Other questions? What you got, people?
Are you ready to talk about future?
Karen, I'm always ready to talk about the future, sister. Good to hear your voice.
Okay, so
Okay.
you're getting ready to build a new building. How are you going to make it so that you can be outside or include people from outside coming in?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so we can talk later in a minute about what it was like to transition from outdoors to indoors, because that was crazy. But to answer your question, our COVID experience, particularly our church outdoors experience, changed what we want in a facility. In general, we knew we wanted multi-purpose outdoor space, but that was kind of a dream. That was like, oh, this would be nice if.
Yeah, it was a sidebar.
Now we're like priority, and we know how to do it.
Good.
So we do not have architect drawings that we're ready to show the church. That's all in process and blah, 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 blah. But I'll tell you, that outdoor space is stinking huge. It is a big, big, big covered patio, because if we can have multi-purpose, multi-modality, constant flex space, if the indoor space can be flexible, set up for internet use, if the outdoor space can be flexible, can we have worship services outdoors? Yep. Can we have this outdoors? Yep. Can we have that outdoors? It just makes better stewardship sense. Just makes better stewardship sense to be able to do that. I'm seeing misters. Oh yeah, Laura, let's do it. Let's do the misters. Let's do all that stuff. Because I mean, at least the shade is enough of a game changer where we are. And now we've demonstrated to the city of Peoria that we can successfully have outdoor worship services with amplified sound and not have noise complaints if we point the speakers in the right direction. Yeah. So even the things that were danger zones or risk areas for us, we've now demonstrated to the city that we know how to do this and be good neighbors. We also know that we want to keep the view from the street into our property wide open. We don't want to block that view, because we want people to drive by and see us having a good time. We want them to see us gathering, worshiping the Lord, doing whatever we're doing outdoors, and we want people to stream in as we could see them doing, you know, when we were outside. Karen, does that answer your question or no?
It does. I have been to some interesting eating places in the last few months where they have these big, huge doors that open from the bottom up. Yes. So is that what you're looking at?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Anything we can do, not just to have outdoor space, but to have flow space indoor, outdoors. Now it's 120 degrees, forget it. We'll just cook eggs on the sidewalk and call it done.
Right.
But for most of the rest of the year, if we can steward that space, outdoor space is criminally underutilized by churches in Phoenix, and it's a stewardship issue. It was before this. So now it could actually help lower people's anxiety levels if they're worried about COVID, because it's just doggone safer outside. Good question. Okay. So as we shifted from outdoors to indoors, we changed times. So our plan was to have 3 options for 3 months in the summer, because it's too hot to be outside. 9 a.m., mask required. 10:30 a.m., mask optional, and a live stream at 10:30 a.m.
All inside.
All inside.
Inside.
All inside. It was even more work to come inside, because we hadn't been inside for months. We had to rebuild our sound system, which we took it apart to go outside. Oh my goodness, what are you going to do if 60 families decide to come on Sunday?
60 new families.
We were out of space pre-pandemic. Now we're like, whoa, what do we even do? So our foyer is not big. We converted it into overflow seating. We put screens up there. I don't like screens, but I put them up out there because we thought it was going to be necessary as overflow seating. We made a big investment in live stream, a big investment for us, for a small church in live stream. We thought we'd get mobbed. We didn't. We lost people in the transition. We gained people in the transition. In fact, we had people who came the first Sunday of indoor church said, I've been watching you for months, waiting for you to go inside. Here I am. Hallelujah. So that was exciting, but that was our kind of launch into Circle of Peace 4.0. Interesting point. Excuse me, I'm going to need to get a drink of water. What do you guys talk?
Interesting point. I have no idea what he was going to say. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Jeremy had a great idea that which was true, that somehow to have people back into our multi-purpose white ceilinged indoor space was going to be anticlimactic.
Low ceilings too. Low ceilings, narrow hallways. This is the kind of space you're not supposed to be in during COVID.
Right. So yeah, so he's like, I'm thinking like swanky coffee shop. I think we should have a swanky coffee shop vibe with low lights and cafe lights, and we had our ceiling painted acoustic black so that it was better for the live stream, and that people felt like there was an upgrade to coming back in.
And we wanted it to feel cozy and not cramped.
Yes.
Because it was cramped. It was cramped, right. But we didn't want it to feel cramped.
Right. And we were trying to socially distance chairs and, kind of have Juliana.
Masks were optional. Was that because your people were vaccinated? If masks were optional for that one service, how did you make that optional inside?
Barbara, could you repeat the question? I want to hear you.
If you said masks were optional at the 10:30 service, I believe you said, because everyone there was vaccinated, or
no,
because
we do not have a vaccine policy.
So how did you make it mask optional if you were inside? Can
you repeat the question? We just put up a sign that said mask optional.
You said at 10:30 your masks were optional. How could they have been optional if you were inside?
It's different in Arizona.
Yeah, the COVID restrictions were different in Arizona at that time. We weren't going against anything that the city hadn't already loosened.
I don't care about the restrictions. I care about the health of the people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, trust us too. And remember Sarah, our medical person, who said, look, we were back indoors.
The 1st of June. We were outside all the way through the end of May.
Right. So every adult could have, by that time in Arizona, we had a quick rollout of vaccines. We're a lot fewer people than in California. Every adult could have had a vaccine by that point. We decided not to be legalistic. I mean, we just decided that was not going to be, we're not going to be a line we're going to draw in the sand. We know incidentally, anecdotally, for people sharing, we're way above. Right now, we're at 59% vaccinated in Arizona. Really low in terms of the national average, but we knew we were well above that in for our congregants, but we were not going to monitor people's vaccine status. We just made a decision as a church we were going to do that.
The other thing I'd say, Barbara, and I don't prepare to feel depressed. Okay. There are a bajillion churches in Phoenix, and there are loads of them in the West Valley. I think we did more mitigation than almost all the churches in the West Valley.
We did.
We were on the far fringe outlier. For churches in our area to have anything mask required. Got nasty emails from strangers, got nasty Facebook messages from strangers. So I don't know where everybody's number one medical situation is or where your feelings are at, but the vibe where we're at is let's get back to normal immediately. Now I'm not,
which we didn't do.
We didn't do that. We didn't do that and we still aren't there. So I just hear me say that wherever you as individuals or as churches are in that spectrum, our neighborhood is many people, the majority, I would say people in our neighborhood have been like, let's get back to normal for a long time. So I'll pause there and say, Barbara, do you feel like I adequately spoke to your question or no?
Yes, I think you answered me. I just didn't understand why one service was mask required and one wasn't.
At that point, we're trusting people to make their own decisions.
Yeah, so people could choose their company.
And you didn't get anybody that got COVID in your congregation?
So we definitely had plenty of people in our church that got COVID. We didn't have anybody, that could ever trace it anywhere close to having gotten it at one of our services.
Right.
So we got a ton of medical personnel. They got hit first.
Right, from work.
From work, yeah.
Right.
But we don't have any knowledge or any really good guesses. So we're like, maybe I got it at church. I mean, probably not. Again, we don't do contact tracing or something like that, so we can't answer that question on a technical level. But tons of people got it through work typically, or then through family members, or they go travel. Somebody went to Vegas, and it didn't stay in Vegas. So they got COVID and got over it and they're fine. But no, we were, I'll put money down that we were the safest church environment in the West Valley of Phoenix.
Well, and let me just say this too. I was on the most cautious end of all of our leadership, I would say. I mean, everybody was pretty cautious, but my son is immune compromised and has some stuff. So we were being really careful. And I really struggled with that, Barbara. But the thing that helped me the most was at that point, I mean, our medical liaison had really been super helpful all through the process. And I was struggling with that decision, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but the thing that got me to that place was at that point, everybody, we kind of had a handle, we as a culture had a handle on what you could do to keep away from it, get vaccinated if you're really worried about it. Like, you know, everybody had had a chance to make a decision at their comfort level at that point. And so as the best stewarding of, you know, what we were trying to accomplish on a Sunday morning was to have 3 different ways that people could engage. One of them, complete mitigation, stay home and tune in online if that's where you're at. And then our first service was the one that was mask required throughout the whole building.
And spaced seating. We had a lot more space.
Yeah, we took out a bunch of seats and distance to protect the families like mine. My family only came, I stayed, but my family only came to first service so that people that were still at that comfort level could feel comfortable. They weren't coming in after people that were unmasked. Like, we really did that intentionally. And then still tried to engage with people that really weren't, like, we had people on the other end of the spectrum who weren't going to come and participate in community unless if they had to wear a mask.
Right.
And so it was just sort of like doing our best to be the best steward of our space and our time and God's word, honestly. I mean, just really trying to be a vessel to reach people to the best of our ability, knowing that at that point in time, people are going to make their own decisions and we can't be the boss of them.
Yeah, I think, and
does that make sense?
I think in my talking point was less about how can we accommodate every single opinion, because we can't.
Right.
And more about what is in our church, what is the spectrum of medical realities?
Yes.
Okay, because that's not opinion based, that's medically based. So if somebody has got pre-existing conditions, if somebody is at risk for this, and I've lost family members to COVID, okay, like I know the drill. Like, those folks need to be connected with and supported in some way. And if somebody is young, if they're healthy, no pre-existing conditions, got COVID, beat COVID, and then got vaccinated, that's a different medical category than somebody like my dad who has lung cancer, right? And so it didn't come from a place primarily of how do we accommodate every opinion, but let's frame this in terms of medical reality. Not everybody's in the same boat medically. And how can we provide as much involvement as possible to try to meet people wherever they're at as much as possible. And I'll repeat again, we were by far the most mitigating church in probably the entire West Valley of Phoenix. So we were the wacko fringes for where we are, even though I don't consider us to be wacko. I just thought it was good judgment and caution. But we were for sure the outlier. We're for sure the outlier for where we are.
All right, it was like a couple minutes away.
Yeah, so we go to 8:45, is that right? Okay, let me give you one final statistics, and then you can keep firing ready with any questions you have. So if you remember, 60 new families, and then a bunch of people started finding us when we went to indoors, which is wonky. Interesting bit. Of those 60 new families who came during Church Outdoors, about 6, 7 have stayed with us, okay? That's a retention rate of about 10%. And now you'll never hear the words retention rate in the Bible, okay? Not there, but I got 15 minutes, people. I got to wrap this up. So that 10% retention rate is the national average for churches even pre-COVID. I've done seminars at some of your churches and told your boards this, that your retention rate is going to be about 10%. That's the national average. Pre-COVID, our retention rate, 10%. Church Outdoors, our retention rate, 10%. So whatever did change during COVID, what didn't change was the number of people who stuck. Now, I think they all need Jesus and they all should come back to church. And I'm still going after them if I can, appropriately, welcoming them into Christian community. But it trips me out that it didn't change the rate of people who choose to stay and connect to a community. It was still 10%. And whether that's high, low, good or bad, we can talk about that later. But wild to think that didn't change for us. But I'll tell you what, had we not done church outdoors, we sure would not have had 60 families didn't walk in the door for the first time, walk into a service for the first time. So, okay, we got about 15 minutes till we're done. Questions, ask me nosy questions, anything you want. Fair game. Oh,
Are you still doing things that you were doing outside? Have you changed things indoors because of what you were doing out?
We have people asking for outdoor church again, because now it's a tradition. And we'll do it for the next 377 years, right? Whether there's a pandemic or not necessarily. But it was become an important part of the life of our church. And we're going, can we replicate this? Doggone, that's a lot of work. We're a small church. We're already basically doing 3 services, because I'm telling you, 9 a.m. mass, that's a service. 10 a.m. mass optional, that's a service. Live stream is a ton of work. Totally worth it. It is a metric stinking ton of work. And it's like having 3 services. And then somebody's like, can we have an outdoor one too? Sure, let's have 4 services, right? We have 12 people at every service. But we want to engage that spirit where we can, and we want to do outdoor things where we can, which is why we want to build a venue that's actually set up to be outdoors, so we can do that a little bit. Carlene, does that answer your question or no?
Yes, I think most would be fun back to how we used to do church. Our outdoor service was a little streamlined in a different way, and we've kind of gone back to our sort of regular indoor.
I mean, we're streamlined still, like 3 songs and a sermon, people. Like that's about what you get. The big change would be, golly, did we switch? Like before, we were probably doing 10% online giving, 90% in person. Boy, that flipped completely. We're like 90% online giving at this point.
Well, we made ourselves more accessible by going outside. Like COVID forced us to make ourselves more accessible in a lot of different ways. By being outside, by going online, by the live stream, by upping our online giving game, like making ourselves more accessible. And that hasn't changed.
It worked.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so we've maintained that level of accessibility or increased it even after coming indoors. And I don't think that we're the same as we were before.
I guess you're right. I guess we are a little more human. I guess the message is longer. In a good way.
Maybe, yeah.
No,
which
it is,
great.
Jeremy. It is. Yes, it is. In a good way. Because Jeremy, remember there was complaint about that. Like Jeremy used to preach longer, remember? In outdoors. I mean, really, that was a thing. That was a thing.
We're still a little pared down chairs wise, like we're still spaced out.
Yes.
Pretty good.
But I think we were, throughout this, we were like, how can we not? A lot of pastors, a lot of church leaders burned out during this time. And we streamlined because we're like, how do we not burn people out? People are showing up and making it happen in a pandemic. So how do we not mess them up? Right. And so it's like, set where we can, simplify, except for the live stream, which is a metric ton of work, but worth it.
Okay, and I will say one other thing. We had done this pre-COVID, but it is that our band plays for 2 services in person. So we have music at the front of the service and then the front of the second service, so they're free to go. They'll have heard the sermon in the first service, so after music in the second service, they're free to go. So instead of being there for 3 hours, which they're really there for that long, but so you know, that kind of thing we've streamlined as well.
Yeah, rather than having a sermon sandwich where music,
yes.
sermon, music, now it's like music up front and then the band can go out back and smoke and do whatever, because they just give them a break. Because otherwise, man, they're being on a small church.
Right.
Like it's a lot to ask. We're offering a lot of flexibility for a church our size.
Right.
And that taxes people. And so you want them to give joyfully, and you want it to be sustainable, and you don't want to burn people out. And we think so far we're doing okay with that.
Did you use PayPal for the giving online?
Okay, so hang on to your hat. There are many different methods for giving online. We thought we would try 1 or 2. And sort of like the humans at Outdoor Church, it comes streaming in from all directions, okay? Not that it was a ton of money, but it came through, I don't know, a bunch of different, PayPal, Zelle, electronic pay, Venmo, something else, little birdies flying through the air with money in their beak. they sent them in all these different ways. And we were like, guess we got to figure out on our end how to process all of it.
6 ways.
And that's a lot of work, Carlene Daniels, for our office staff, because like to process all of those is work. But we were like, you know what? We prefer that you use this method or that method, but forget about it. Carlene, we had people who only wanted to give by cash and called us and said, I'm too busy to come to church. I want to give by cash. You don't have a secure mailbox. We got a secure mailbox, right? Whatever. Pour that concrete, baby. Let's do it. Drill that sucker into the ground. And are there people who now drive by offering with cash into our giant steel bulletproof mailbox? Yeah. Now that's a concrete example, haha, literally. But we were like, yes to everything. As much as we can figure out how to do logistically. If you want to participate this way, we'll try to do it. Right? Yeah, without burning out. If you want to try to do it this way, we're going to try to do it as much as we can. And that got more than you asked for there, didn't you, Carlene? But thanks for the question. What else you got, folks? I'll look here. Yeah. Thanks, Bernie Chavez. I got that, brother.
How many people do you have? You're talking about worried about burning out in leadership. What kind of a number of people do you have in leadership?
What does that mean? What do you mean by leadership?
Well, your music, the band,
so
children's services.
Let's try to bust out the teams, and Jamie would know that. 6-8 people in the band.
No, more than that.
More than that. About 11.
We got a bunch of new people in. Yeah. Hallelujah.
We are just spoiled
at this point
with our musicians. So we probably have a dozen people in the band, so they're able to rotate through pretty well. There's some people that do it every Sunday because they love it, but we have enough. Those that need to rotate out can.
Children's ministry teams, how many?
Children's ministry teams, we have just enough to run what we're doing. Probably another dozen or so. The main thing, I mean, you can pick any team. The point was we really, like, sometimes what we were going to do was limited by how many people do we have to do this thing, not whether or not we actually should or can, especially when we were coming back indoors, because we were fighting against people who weren't ready. Like our teams, like we had to start over because everybody that was serving before didn't necessarily come back once we went inside. Or they came back and they were there in person, but they weren't comfortable serving, or they got used to not serving, so they didn't want to serve anymore because now they were doing all the traveling that they missed out
4.0, Circle of Peace 4.0, several transformations there.
Right, and so it just became a real conversation of, before we even talk about what we're going to do or what we can do, let's find out who we have and who's on board. It's
like an audit, really, of who you have today.
Yeah, a team audit, and then what can we do with what we have rather than, you know, the sky's the limit, because that was really a limiting factor in a couple of ways. But it forced us again to be creative and think differently about, well, do we really need to do it that way, or is there a different way that we can do it? And including the teams in that discussion, and we got some really creative ideas from that too. I mean, it hasn't been all roses, I'm not gonna lie.
The other thing, numbers wise, and if you were to look at our like reports for attendance, for example, 9 a.m. is probably, I mean, total people in the house, adults, kids, staff, band, everything, 50-ish at 9 a.m. Way less than what I thought, to be honest with you. 9 a.m. has always been pretty slim. 10:30, we're not quite at 100. We're at 80-ish, maybe.
A couple weeks ago, we were at 96 or something. That's
yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that high water mark. But under 100, maybe 80. Live viewing, probably 20 screens. And so that's what, 40 people? And usually our YouTube has about 100 views within a week. So 50 at the first service, 80 at the second, 20 live views, and then 100 within a week. Like, we now have a certain percentage of our budget that we know is income, offerings coming in from people who are 100% online. They're not going to leave their home.
In England.
Or they're not local. They're out of state, out of country.
Yeah.
And they connected with us that way. And so that that live stream has become more of a lifeline, 2 ways, than any anything. Okay, so here we go. Laura Bass, going back. How does singing outside work? Badly. That's how it works.
Terrible.
Badly. And don't tell my church I said this, because whatever, it's being recorded. We came back in. COVID did not help our singing. Let's just say that. Okay.
Well, especially in masks.
He's not talking about our band.
Our band is freaking amazing. Our
But
band, like,
congregation.
but right, but it's COVID is bad for congregational singing, and so I think that that's a learning curve for us. Band quality went up, congregational singing enthusiasm went down, but we're working on it. Good question.
When you have two services like that, when do your children meet and the youth?
Both.
The kids meet at both services. We have full kids classes, both services.
During the service?
During the service.
Yes.
And then our youth meet on Wednesday nights and between the services on Sunday mornings. So we have a thing called Breakfast Club for our youth, trying to catch the families that went to first service, stay a little bit longer and let us borrow your teens, or come a little early and let us borrow your teens. And they just throw donuts at them and have like more relational time. And then our youth group is on Wednesday and the teens sit together and go to the service, usually second service, on Sunday mornings. There's not like a separate thing, class or Sunday school for the youth on Sundays.
Right. And Carlene, we initially made decisions to move our kids out into kids classes during church because we were out of space.
We couldn't fit the kids in the room anymore.
It was bottoms and seats. We did not have enough seats for the bottoms we had. So we had to schlep kids to the back of the house during worship because we were out of chairs.
It was all pre-COVID.
Yeah, that was all pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
And because, well, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, yes.
We got 5 minutes. Okay, we got from Juliana. From Laura, did you say, wait. Okay, let me look at the chat. Hold on. Did you use any screens or TVs when you were outside? Heck no. I'm not a big screen person anyways.
Oh,
but
so we can talk about that.
QR reader.
Yeah, so we had a QR code. So
That
Juliana, we put all of our song lyrics online, all of our announcements, anything that would have been up on the screen. People came and scanned a QR code.
Game changer. Great idea.
And just pulled up the lyrics on their phone. And we still are doing that. In fact, we have people who come in person with the lyrics on the screen in front of them and still pull up the QR code on their phone.
Right. But paper bulletins, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. QR code.
So that would be another thing, actually, Carlene, in answer to your question that we tried outside that we brought inside, which is the QR code and paperless.
Yes.
Big winner. Plus, people are joining us online, and if they're joining us online from Texas or whatever, and if they're live, they can sing along with the lyrics off their phone, right? So, and plus the logistics of doing projection outside, just Jesus doesn't want me to do that. That's just awful.
During the daytime.
In Phoenix sun, forget about it.
Right.
Okay, 3 minutes, people. Let's make the most of the time. What you got?
Have any fellowship time after the service, or sometime that people can meet and talk together, maybe distanced? But
so I'll tell you what. Our first Sunday back indoors was like a stinking reunion. People who had never seen the inside of our building, people who had never seen each other without a mask. It was a hug fest for some people. Okay. Now other folks are still like 10-foot poles. Don't touch me. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm a hugging pastor. Like if people feel comfortable or they ask for a hug, I'm in. I'm knuckle bumping pastor now, unless they're like, bring it in, big guy. So it's truly what my wife said early on in the pandemic was every interaction is now a negotiation. Now more than ever. And it's absolutely true. And just because somebody's hugging you this week doesn't mean they're going to hug you next week. It changes. And so you have to be sensitive and respect that. I would say as the pandemic is going on indoors, people are more and more comfortable talking. And plenty of people are like, I don't ever want to talk to anybody again. I'm in my PJs on the couch. So there's a mix of comfort levels. And we have maybe barely enough space indoors and outdoors for people to kind of engage on the basis of their, we'll say, physical proximity comfort level. Is that a good answer or no?
I think so, yeah. If you're talking outdoors, just a direct answer to your question, yeah, there was time afterwards. People hung out and chatted to you know, if they needed to go, they left, but that was sort of the hangout time. Coming back indoors and having 2 services, the between the services is really like that time. Some people hang out after second service, but most of it is, you know, if they come to second service, they come early so they can see the people that are leaving from first service. So everybody still has that. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody asked, do we have live captions operating now? Answer is no, not yet. What are the questions you got? People, clock's ticking.
What are you doing for your youth on Wednesday night?
Youth on Wednesday night. Nate is our youth pastor.
Hired a youth pastor in a pandemic. Great idea.
10 hours a week.
He is doing a curriculum that he has pared down. It's about 15 to 20 minutes of like small group, like information, and then a small group time. But before that is like game time, hangout, chat, and then small group time after a little teaching. It's pretty simple.
Quick question here. You're perfect. Did you have to offer any training classes for those less tech savvy so they could learn how to use everything? Yes. Yes. And I still do everything badly. Eric. Just how it goes.
Yes, and yes, and yes. And we've shifted teams as we have upped our live stream game and our media game and all of the techie stuff. There were some people who could roll before who can't anymore. And so navigating, yep, it's my job to navigate and usher people into the place that Jesus wants them in.
Dear Jesus, send us nerds and geeks that know how to use the
Nerds
computers.
and teenagers.
Yes.
And teenagers, yes.
Okay, if anybody has any further questions, like, listen, we're all on the same team. We're in our district and we're in your corner. I'm serious. Call, text, anything we can do to support. And I'll tell you what, a year from now, I want to hear about how you were faithful to the Holy Spirit and how you went for it. Because we can all come to these meetings and go away and do nothing. Yeah. I want to hear about what you did. I want to hear about what you tried. I'll tell you where I screwed up. You don't have to tell me where you screwed up. Just pretend like you didn't screw up. But just, I want to hear about what you did in your church to take the risk and go out there and go after it. Okay? Thank you all very much. It's been an honor to be with you tonight.